أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد انتجبه لولايته واختصه برسالته وأكرمه بالنبوة وأشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأمينه في أرضه وهجته على عباده اللهم صل وسلم على محمد وآله الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله أوصيكم عباد الله وإياي بتقوى الله. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. First and foremost, I take this opportunity to remind myself the importance of adhering to the principles of taqwa before reminding each and every one of you the exact same. The principles of taqwa, the elements of taqwa have been reverberated throughout the Holy Quran from the beginning until the very end. When Allah begins to speak about the characteristics of the mu'mineen, He makes it a point to mention that the mu'mineen are those who have taqwa. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatih. وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. O you who believe, once you have iman settled within your hearts, now strive and struggle, endeavor and become spiritually perfect. Move closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do I move closer to Allah? By fearing Him, by being conscious of His presence everywhere, in every dimension of my lives, whether it be public, whether it be private. Fear Him the way He ought to be feared. وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. And do not depart from this world except that you are in the state of absolute submission. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa kunu ma'as sadiqeen. O you who believe, have taqwa. And of course, be alongside or take the message from the sadiqeen. Those who are the establishers of truth, those who are the manifestations of truth. There's a very interesting verse. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna Allaha ma'alladhina taqaw walladhina hum muhsinun. What are the effects of taqwa? Well, a person who has taqwa established within his lifestyle, Inna Allaha ma'alladhina taqaw. Allah is with those who have taqwa. Imagine the whole world can be standing against you, but if Allah is with you and Allah supports you and Allah aids you, then that is worth everything that you and I can ever imagine. The whole world can be standing against you, but as long as Allah is with you, you have everything in your hands. To continue our discussions, looking at the khutbah of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam in Nahj al-Balagha, where he speaks about the characteristics of the muttaqeen, khutbatul muttaqeen as it's known, you find that in this particular section that I want to dissect, the Imam alayhi salam begins to speak about the characteristics by saying that those who have taqwa وَوَقَفُوا أَسْمَاءُهُمْ عَلَى عِلْمٍ نَافِعٍ لَهُمْ. It says that one of the characteristics of those who have taqwa is that they are very vigilant, they are alert. In which case, in which scenario? Where they get their knowledge from. They don't just acquire any form of knowledge, they acquire knowledge that is beneficial. And living in this day and age, where there is a vast amount of information available to each and every one of us, literally at our fingertips. Before, in the olden days, you had to go to the libraries and access all of these different ancient books. Now everything is online. Everything is online, and the whole paradigms of studying and obtaining education has changed vastly in the past 20 years. When you're exposed to so much information, when all of us are exposed to so much information, it becomes hard for us to identify which knowledge is truthful, which knowledge is beneficial, and which knowledge is useless. So here Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says that the identity of a muttaqi, a person who has taqwa, is that he searches, he acquires knowledge that is truthful, or knowledge that is beneficial. In the dua of Asr, what do we say? We say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa. Protect me, Ya Allah. I seek your protection from knowledge which does not have any benefit whatsoever. Now, many of us are raised in an environment. We are raised in a society where from a very young age we are taught to believe that the marks and the examinations and the scores that we acquire within our schools, within our GCSEs, within our A-levels, and beyond that within our universities is what truly matters in this world. It's a form of knowledge that we acquire, that we attain when we are young, in the process of establishing our place in this world. The reality, however, is further from the truth. What truly matters is, of course, the skills that a person acquires, the experience, the wisdom that a person attains throughout the years, more than what he acquires in the examinations. We choose our courses in university, for example, after witnessing certain personalities within our communities who are wealthy, who are successful. This person studied accountancy, therefore I should go and study accountancy because I see the house that he lives in and I see the cars that he drives. Success follows him wherever he goes, therefore I should follow his path. Some of us, we acquire to become doctors, some of us acquire to become dentists, and so on and so forth. Majority of us, not all of us, the majority of us are inclined towards material success, and therefore we follow the paths of those who are successful. We develop this idea thinking that education is only worth it if it brings me material success. As long as education gives me wealth, then it is beneficial. Now, interestingly enough, there's a massive paradigm shift in the world of education specifically. Everything is progressing so fast, it is unbelievable. 15 years ago, I'll give you a very simple example. 15 years ago, a person who studied 4 years in university, acquiring a certificate in computer science, that certificate holds no value in this day and age. Why? Because the whole paradigms of programming and computer science has changed over the past 15, 20 years. A 13-year-old who has knowledge of programming can be more skillful than a person who has been formally taught and trained in the university for 3 to 4 years. Likewise, in areas of graphic designing, so many softwares are being published every year. If a person was just to take a break from his occupation, he would literally be left behind. He would not be aware of the different programs and the different softwares that are now being published. In Wall Street, effectively they control the global economy in one way or another. Their jobs are now being replaced by algorithms. So you find the whole institution of education, jobs being replaced by computers, the whole paradigm is shifting, and it is shifting very, very fast. We are geared into thinking that knowledge is a tool to material success. But the real world tells us otherwise. You'll have a person who has not even been to university being far more successful than a person who has multiple degrees under his name. Gaining knowledge in this world from an Islamic perspective is essential. Don't get me wrong, it is essential. It is pertinent for societies to function. We need specialists in certain fields so that we can rely on them, so that we can cooperate with one another and build our societies, build our communities. But at the same time, striving to get such knowledge alone is not sufficient and in itself does not carry much weight. Knowledge of Islam is what is recognized as beneficial knowledge, ilm al-nafi'. Knowledge that can support the community as well. I can attain multiple degrees. As long as I give that knowledge back to the community, it becomes part of the fold of ilm al-nafi', beneficial knowledge. Knowledge that can help others to become successful. Ultimately, they can support the Imam of our time. Knowledge that can aid others in times of need. For example, I can pass down whatever experience and wisdom that I have acquired over many years. This part or comes under the part of ilm al-nafi'. All of these are manifestations of ilm al-nafi'. One day, very interesting hadith, the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he walks into a masjid and he sees two groups of people. He says one group of people engaging in ibadah, the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the other group, it was majlis al-ilm. They were sitting, they were talking with one another, Q&A sessions, they were discussing certain aspects of Islam. And then he turns to his companions and he says, I would rather be with the second group, Majlis al-Ilm, rather than the Majlis that are engaged in ibadah. Why? The reason is because knowledge helps us understand the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam, their version of Islam. When we understand the version of Islam proposed by the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam, we can have a better understanding of the true message of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And this in turn allows us to have a better understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we have a better, stronger understanding of Allah, our ibadah towards Him carries weight. There is profundity in our ibadah towards Him. It makes us understand some of the decisions that Allah makes for us in our lives, some of the things that Allah destines for us, the fate that is in the fate that He has chosen for us. What's interesting is that in this particular hadith, the Holy Prophet walks into the masjid. Masjid. This is a masjid, isn't it? This area here. You find that the center of Islamic studies, the hawza that has been in existence for thousands of years, you'll find that the center of Islamic studies is often found within the masjid. The masjid is not just used as a place of worship. It is used as a place to gain knowledge. In Najaf, for example, if you were to go towards the Holy Land in Najaf, you'll find that many of the hawza circles are found within the different masajids. Masjid al-Hindi, Masjid al-Ansari, Masjid al-Gharawi. All of these are different masajids where the teachers take time to teach their research. Likewise in Qom, the masjid is not just a place of worship, it is a place where a person can gain knowledge, acquire knowledge, and share knowledge with others. What's important here in this discussion of gaining knowledge is being able to identify beneficial knowledge from knowledge which is not beneficial. As I said in the beginning, because we are exposed to a plethora of information, we may not understand what is true knowledge. I may have, for example, in front of me 2 scholars who have been studying for decades in the religion of Islam, within Qom, within Najaf. But now because of technology, their research is published. Their speeches are published on YouTube, and it becomes hard for me to understand which one is right, which one is wrong, which one's evidences are stronger than the other, for example. It's hard for me to realize this, but all of their speeches and articles and research is published online. I, as a normal individual who is unable to decipher which is closer to the reality, which opinion is closer to the reality, because we now live in a day and age where people or different scholars are coming up with different opinions. So how do I know which one is closer to the reality? Well, first and foremost, I am not forced to make a decision or to pick a side. Take your time, research, ask members within the scholarly committee or community, for example. Make it a point to turn to Allah and seek guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of the du'as that we have, Ya Allahu, Ya Rahmanu, Ya Rahim, Ya Muqallib al-Qulub, Thabbit Qulubuna ala Dinik. It's like, I'm in a state of confusion, Ya Allah. I don't know which path is the true path, but establish my heart towards you. You show me what is the true path. And necessarily this takes time, this takes patience, and this is something that we should often establish within our lives. To turn to Allah, to seek to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to find or give us hidayah, to give us knowledge of what is true, and to not make us believe or to accept that which is not true. Very interesting ayah in the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَرْفَعُ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ الدَّرَجَاتِ. It says, and Allah will raise the rank of those who have faith. Number one, iman, faith is definitely essential, and those who have been given knowledge. Darajat is plural. When a person has ilm and he has knowledge and he has faith, Allah can raise him unlimited. Allah can raise his position spiritually, and there is no limit to it whatsoever. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه ولا منازع له في أمره الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه ولا شبيه له في عظمته نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد جاء من عنده مصدقا للمرسلين خلف فينا راية الحق عليا وأولاده المعصومين حجج الله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليهم وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد. When it comes to the discussions of gaining knowledge, what's important is that we as a community should get together and try and find different programs of how we can support one another in gaining knowledge. Some of the examples or practical examples that we can utilize is for us to enroll in certain online classes, for example, provided by a number of organizations. There are plenty of organizations out there that can suit your needs. For example, if you're looking to gain knowledge in fiqh, aqaid, or even looking to gain knowledge in philosophy or any other science within the religion of Islam, it's very easy for you to find a program available online. Number two, if you have any interests in different topics, for example, I'm available. Come discuss with me certain topics. Perhaps if there is a great interest within the community, I can provide a series of lectures in that particular topic. Utilize the resident ulama, for example, in the different communities. Number three, to get together with your spouses, to get together with your children, to discuss certain things, different ahadith, yes, with your families, with your friends, for example. Speak about the different aspects of the religion of Islam. Try and ask questions. One of the greatest ways to develop knowledge is by asking questions. It's not by memorizing or, for example, reading pages upon pages of information. It's by asking questions. Number four, by establishing, for example, book clubs or lessons and classes within the community. Seminars can be held within these halls. Inshallah, if we go back to normal, we can establish all of these different things. And number five, if we don't have time for any of this, then we can, for example, read certain ahadith, small ahadith of the Ahlul Bayt, try and familiarize ourselves with their teachings, inshallah. With gaining knowledge comes a heavy responsibility, and that is to practice what is learned. One day, a group of individuals came to Ayatollah Bahjat, marhum rahmatullah alayhi, and they said, teach us something about the religion of Islam. He said, you don't need to be taught anything. Practice what you know already. Practice what you know. Once you practice what you already have knowledge of, that will take you very close towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes we feel that we need to learn, and we need to learn more and more and more. Sometimes we just need to sit back and realize that there is already that I know. Let me try and establish that practically within my life. When a person has knowledge, there comes a heavy responsibility, and that is to practice what has been learned. Likewise, when a person has been given authority, where he has power, he needs to live up to that position. In the recent week, we saw the resignation of Mr. Hancock, right? The health secretary. Very interesting. Here you have a clear example of a person who came into public for so long, began to preach to the public of how one should behave. And on the other hand, we found that in his private life, he was something else entirely different, to the extent that the public demanded his resignation. This is a man who came in public and warned people to be separated from their families. Mothers, fathers, grandparents were separated from their children and their grandchildren for a very long time, simply because they were frightened to catch the disease or to spread the disease. You found, for example, many loved ones were unable to visit their loved ones in the hospitals. People were not able to attend weddings or funerals, for that matter of fact. There was a lot of restraint. And all along, you found that this person who was preaching this particular message was behaving in contrast in his public life. Now someone may say, but his private life is his private life. We have no business in his private life. That's true. We don't have any business in his private life, but he was dictating how we should behave in our private lives as well. So keep that in mind. So now he has resigned, and despite the fact of his resignation, he is still acting as an active MP, and he still receives the salary of an MP. And we all know what this means and what will come from this. Usually, it's very easy for us to say that there is one law for the commoners and one law for the elite. Ultimately, nothing will happen, and we will all eventually forget that this ever happened within a couple of weeks. There's a very interesting philosophical ideas presented by certain Christian philosophers many centuries ago, the likes of Augustine. He said if justice is taken away, if the element, the concept of justice does not exist whatsoever, then governments are just as good as a band of robbers. Aristotle and Plato also believed in this idea that the goal of the state was to enable people to lead the good and virtuous life. In practice, however, only a few men lived according to the divine laws. So the Christian philosopher Augustine said, and this is his series of evidences or argument, he says the states have a ruler, a state has a ruler and a government, and the laws governing conduct and the economy. So the state has the position of being rulers, and they dictate certain laws for the commoners. But so do robbers. Thieves who are in a particular group, in a particular clan, for example, they are under a specific leadership and they have disciplines as well. When they steal, they distribute that money amongst themselves. So the state and the robbers are exactly the same in this area. The state, if it's led by unjust rulers, they wage war on their neighbors to seize territory and resources. And likewise, robbers, they steal from neighboring territories as well. So from this area, the state and the robbers are exactly the same. It says, well, if they are exactly the same, then what differences are there between the state and robbers? Justice. Justice is what distinguishes the both of them. If justice is taken away, the government is as good as a band of robbers. Plato, again, was of the opinion, very interesting opinion, which is in line with the religion of Islam. He says, philosophers should be kings. Cities will never be rest, or cities will never have rest from evil unless philosophers are kings. In our case, we don't say that philosophers should be king. We say that the A'immat al-Athhar should be kings. When there are divine leaders placed, then naturally you'll find goodness will come within the community. When there are spiritual leaders who have taken control of the lands and a political position, those who are spiritual from inside, those who are knowledgeable, they know exactly what Allah wants from them and what Allah wants from the people, naturally you'll find that the entire empire will turn to Allah and they will accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Spirituality from the top, it leaks down, it trickles down to the commoners. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this occasion of Friday, when we see all of these different injustices happening at the elite level, we truly miss the justice of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And we can only pray for the reappearance of the Imam of our time, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Who will establish justice and is the true successor of the Imam alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala abdika wa rasulik sayyid al-mursaleen wa rasuli rabbil alameen Muhammadin al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alih. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala أمير المؤمنين ووسيء رسول رب العالمين علي المرتضى. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى سيدة النساء العالمين وبذعة الخاتم النبيين فاطمة الزهراء صلوات الله وسلامه عليها. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى سيد شباب أهل الجنة الحسن المجتبى والحسين سيد الشهداء عليهم السلام. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والهجة بن الحسن قائم المنتظر المهدي أرواحنا وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله وتذل بها النفاق وأهله وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة في سبيلك وترزقنا بها الكرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات. وآخر الدعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. وصل اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
Muhammad